Hello, welcome everybody. It is Tuesday, October 3rd, and we're here today for a Cosmic Tower Q&A. And Nico's been doing some exciting research around Jack Cruz and how different things work. So, Nico, I know we didn't have a lot of questions prepped around that, but after we go through the questions from the community, I'm curious what you might share from that perspective. I know you've been learning a lot. So welcome to the call today, Nico. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to see you all. You guys, we always enjoy your questions live. You can raise your hand or you can put something in the chat. And during the time between calls, some questions come in that we think are going to be particularly beneficial for the community, and we bring those here as well. So as you think about wanting to raise your hand or ask a question in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and start with one of those. So, Nico, the first question that was sent in is my best friend has twin two-year-olds and a 4-year-old with her daughter now living with her and a dysfunctional partner. The kids are a continuous nightmare. The relationship is strained 100-fold since her kids moved in. Is it feasible that the presence of the tower and all this chaos would help? She's on the path which her spirit and soul are now raw.
Mm-hmm. Well,
like
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
absolutely. The Cosmic Tower can help, and in many ways. Like, first of all, let's say that you're always stretched and always on edge, and the people in your family are too. What kind of relationship does that naturally create? Versus when you're at a vacation or when you're relaxed, when you're in a natural environment, I believe we have much more bandwidth to communicate, and there's more emotional stability, for lack of a better word, which I believe always improves communication. That's one aspect of it. Now, not everything is like unicorns and like some are all positive with the Cosmic Tower. And I mean that in a way that oftentimes for us to come to a different consciousness, a level of consciousness, or to really improve our relationships with others, there are patterns that we need to see, patterns that we hold deep within us that interfere not only with the relationship with ourselves, but also with the relationship of others. So one of the things that we often hear from people with the Cosmic Tower is that, like, the house is much more peaceful, the energy field. And I believe one part of that is because all these like non-native EMFs and all these, for lack of a better word, detrimental energetic influences, whether we're aware of it or not, it not just affects our physical, it also affects our emotional, our mental, and our spiritual bodies. And for most people, that is below the threshold of their awareness, but that doesn't mean because you can't see it that it doesn't affect you. So knowing that the Cosmic Tower creates this natural, harmonious toroidal field, it's like being out with in nature with your family or with your friends or with yourself, but then in your own home. So absolutely, I think it benefits it. But a lot of times what people will experience, it's like not a straight line, right? They feel really good. They have a lot of energy. And then it might plateau a little bit. They're like, I cannot really feel my tower anymore. And then it might even seemingly go down a little bit because, well, this came up and that came up, right? And this created chaos in my life. And then I talk to people and I say, like, I mean, honestly, now that you're on the other side of it, or can you see why this had to be addressed in your life? Absolutely. It's something I had to look at, but never had the courage to look at, or never had the urgency to address. But yes, it needs to be addressed. Yes, it is an old pattern that I want to let go. And what happens is, as this happens individually, and we release those old patterns, naturally, a lot of the triggers between people disappear because the underlying causes are being addressed. But that's not
Yeah.
always fun. That could seem like heavy lifting in certain periods.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a little hard in the transition when you first get a tower to understand that like the backdrop of where your life is being painted has turned to harmony because it still looks like you're moving through stuff, right? Because it doesn't disappear everything from your life. It just brings a greater orchestration and coherence to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. You could kind of look at it as you have like maybe a detrimental sound, but you're in a really loud environment. You cannot really hone in. And then you go, you know, and I'm talking the detrimental side, that sound that might be within yourself, like a a critical voice, right? Or limiting beliefs or certain emotions. And now you create a blank canvas in a way. You create a quiet environment. All of a sudden it becomes much more, obvious what needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. All right. So moving on. So when I have my mini tower on my desk at the office every day, that means it is doing more than protecting us all from the Google Fiber, the cameras, and the large Wi-Fi router that are just over our heads. Is it compelling us to level up as it creates space for the next thing in line to be healed? The same for my big tower in my apartment and my neighbors. And wouldn't that be true for each and every tower, whatever size and whatever location?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. Like the person pointed out, the neutralizing the EMFs and all that, that's just one part of it, because we're so focused on this physical spectrum. But don't forget, by the cosmic tower inviting you to level up, to create a constant, more harmonious, more quiet environment, that are the real changes that we're after, because we really connect more to our true self, to our own source of power. And when we are connected there, we're much more powerful than all the external influences. One of the things that they're doing with all the external influences, we had this conversation yesterday with the 5G, with the chemtrails. I think that the most detrimental effect is not so much what they do, but it's that people feel a victim of their environment, or those that are manipulating and saying like, see, what can I do about it? I'm just a small, little, teeny, tiny, powerless being. And that for me is the ultimate corruption in the mental and in the spiritual plane, that we believe that these things can be done to us, and that we're just powerless. So I think the cosmic tower is constantly inviting us to connect stronger to our own source and to become more powerful.
Yeah, for sure. You can't get too much of that.
Yeah.
So I haven't told my colleagues or neighbors about the tower to make them aware of its intended creation, nor to get their consent in all the ways it can affect them. Does this mean that the world soul of humanity already consented for all of us to the towers, or they wouldn't be among us now? I consciously and deliberately chose my towers. They didn't. Do I assume that their higher self is giving permission and I have no obligation to inform them?
Well, it's a very mental approach, right? If we drop into your heart, what do you feel? Now, let me ask you this. If you have a big oak tree in your yard, which has a really big toroidal field, do you go tell the whole neighborhood and ask for permission for that natural field to be there? No, right? Everybody benefits from that big oak. Nobody's going to question it. Now, let me take it a step further. Do your neighbors come ring their doorbell when they put a new router up? Or a new satellite dish, or a new whatever it is? Absolutely not, right? So I believe, like, you getting the tower with pure intent, improving your environment. Nature already given you permission. You see it really quick. Your plants start growing better, your animals feel better. Nature's like, oh yeah, keep it coming, and they'll be all around the tower. Now, as far as human beings are concerned, never forget that the tower is not going to start stepping on all of your neighbors' journey and be like, hey, you got to change this, hey, you got to do that. Because of this higher dimensional connection, it will always check with the higher self of the person whether this is something beneficial for them. Now, for people that absolutely want nothing to do with it, it'll be like, hey, I'll just put a bubble around you. I'll exclude you. from it, and you can have your experience in your bubble of reality.
All right. My first question is on what I've heard mentioned before. That was that the cosmic tower doesn't like to be closed in. My question is, does that mean it stops from working, creating its scalar wave or lowering its power strength, or how far its structured water reaches, or lessens its power within its reach? I'll hold the other part and let you go there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, from a technical point of view, like scalar waves, they pass through matter. They're not like transversal waves. So in that sense, I would say no, there is no issue when there are things around your cosmic tower. Now, obviously, you also do not want to put like detrimental frequencies like right next to it, right? Set your cable router on top of your cosmic tower. I'm not going to say that it doesn't work then, but because it's so close to where the action takes place, there might be some interference with it, right? And it might have a lesser effect. That is more like the technical point of view if you want to look at it. But let's not forget that the cosmic tower is a conscious living being. It's a consciousness. So my question is, how do you want to treat a consciousness that is available for you for 24/7 healing, that clears your water, that clears your EMF? How do you want to treat that? Do you want to just shove it, in your closet with a bunch of boxes on top of it? Right? So because of that, find it a good place as saying, hey, it's a living being that has a beautiful function that is supporting me. Find it a nice place where you would want to sit all day. Don't go put it if you're like, hey, I'm not going to sit in that spot. I'm going to put my tower there because that's convenient. I'm saving space.
Yeah, I think that's great. I've been moving around a lot lately, and as I move around, there's sometimes plugs next to the table where I want to put the tower, or it's not like I have like all the resources to build a shrine or an altar everywhere I go, and frankly, I'm pretty practical and just roll with life. And so sometimes my computer charger goes into a plug that's underneath a desk, and the tower is sitting on top of it, and I feel great about it, because it's the best choice in the space. And, I share that to give people ease. It's like, you do the best you can with where you are. And, if you have a really great home with resources and time and energy, and you can build an altar, that's amazing, and a lot of us have other concerns that get in the way of doing something like that. Okay, so the other half of the question that we were just chewing on is, it's been said that it has energy and that it is a living being, like presence, which I understand. But if there's a situation where it cannot be in its ideal openness, so to speak, like being in a backpack or cabinet or closet, does it stop working, and why?
No, it's not going to stop working, right? But there might be, in a way, like a reduction of its power, right? Because a big part of it, don't forget, it's our interaction with it, right? And it's the same for us. Like, how effective are you if you sit in a closet 24 hours and do your work from there versus you have a beautiful like environment, right? Of course, on a conscious level. And then it's more to me about, you find it a nice spot where it can shine and you interact with it. That's why I'm talking about, because in the realm of consciousness, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. Right? When we merge our consciousness with the tower, it's exponentially more powerful. But prime example, like, I take my 35 everywhere in a backpack, and I wrap it, my dolphin towel, so it's nicely protected, and then I strap it in the back of a car like you would, with a baby or with a kid, and yeah, it's perfectly working. And that's when we're transiting from one place to another, or I go hiking with it, and then when I get to a beautiful spot where I want to sit, I take it out and put it next to me, let it catch the sun rays, and Yeah, but definitely it's still working while I'm hiking with it in the backpack or while it's in the backpack in the car. I can
Nice.
actually feel it on the plane oftentimes when it's like in the cargo realm. Even though oftentimes it's like laying down, I can still like sense it and I call on it to help in the plane.
That's good. We need all the help we can get up there in the sky.
Yep.
Um, a common question that is consistently received is, can a scalar wave be measured? And if not, how can anybody know that it's doing what it's stated to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as like the scalar technologies, a lot of them has been suppressed for a very long time, and the toroidal field, and who actually done a lot of research on this since the early 1900s are the Russians. And a lot of that was obviously in Russian, but there's, I mean, they talk about torsion fields, and there's over 100,000 like Russian documented studies of it that yes, scalar waves are real, and I believe they actually have detectors at some level to notice whether a toroidal field is present or not. Now, another way that a lot of people don't really know about this is all the vibrational radiesthesia, which the French and the Europeans really went deep into in the early 1900s. And that work was then taken by, some of you might know, Ibrahim Karim out of Cairo, who then did the biogeometry. And I don't want to go in like great detail about all that, but it uses instruments to detect vibrations that are in the subtle realms, right? And they have 12 vibrational bands. And it uses something that's very similar to dowsing, but there's one really big distinction, is that dowsing is often mental, where you ask it a question. This does not work that way. It's a scientific way of dowsing, to where you create a particular antenna for a particular frequency, and that can be measured then. And yes, a lot of that has been confirmed in Europe. I think actually in the testimonials we have about a German professional dowser that uses vibrational radiesthesia, and what he noticed about the tower. Then we've had people in Europe measure it, in the United States, that yes, it contains that full light spectrum. And right before Harald passed, I don't know if you remember this, Patter, but he was talking to us about how one lady had bought a big tower because she had cancer. And after 3 weeks, she's like, yeah, I don't know if this thing's doing anything. I want to get rid of it. Harold's like, well, this, what you're dealing now with this cancer, it took decades to develop. And now you're expecting the tower to just go fix it in 3 weeks? It doesn't really work that way. Now, give it some time, right? Let it do its thing. So what she did, she contacted one of the most known guys that does radiesthesia, that measures these things, and she's like, hey, can you check this out? And the guy came back to her after a week. It's like, if I were you, I would really hold on to this. And then he was sharing with Harald how he had measured it, that in every single of the 12 like beneficial bands of light, how the cosmic tower tested really strongly. And then he was going to do a follow-up on that and go much deeper in it and create a report for Harald. So I don't know what happened with that, but I can tell you on our side, we've been doing testing and we're continuing to do tests to even better understand the field. That is as far as direct testing. Now we have also a lot of indirect testing, which is that one of them is an example of where they measured the negative ions in a room, and then they put a tower in it. After 2 hours, they measured it again, and they saw a huge spike in the negative ions. We have a lot of people that do testing, like some of you might know about BioWell, where you can measure the energies, the different energies in the body, and detect for any imbalances. So what is done there, and also I think I have them on the Cosmic Tower website for sure, before and after, where somebody got tested, then they held a mini against their heart, and then they tested it again, and they saw a much more balanced frequency spectrum and energy. And then, of course, don't forget the times we're heading into. You and your consciousness. You are the ultimate instrument as we're moving in these realms, because let's face it, what science measures with voltmeters and it's so rudimentary. That's not where the power lies. It's in this higher subtle realms that are responsible for what science is measuring. That is really where it's at. And that's where we have to, move into now. And we're going to get to this point to where we just have to accept that the ultimate measuring tool is our own consciousness, right? So don't just negate like the changes you see physically, emotionally, mentally, your own improvement, but also look at nature around you. Like Ann Dean on the call last week, how her plants had just absolutely, grown better than ever. Right. And those are all, to me, like very strong indicators that you're dealing with a natural and a beneficial field.
Right on. Okay, so this person said they'd be willing to take the answer by phone if we prefer, and stating that that Harald is now in a different dimension and communicating with his wife on the further advancing of this movement, let alone other topics. Do we get to know what this communication is, and can we communicate with him and ask him questions that I'm sure there are plenty of questions to ask? At least I would have about 1 million of them. I understand the complexity of this question, but it's been stated that he is in communication. Always great respect and thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's something you can do yourself and through the towers. And many people might have different beliefs about this. I have a lot of personal experience with, communicating on the other side. That's how I woke up, and absolutely nothing holds you back from communicating with that intelligence. And that's something that, you can ask the tower to help to develop that, if that's something that you wish to do.
Okay, great. Does the scalar wave come from the crystals in the tower? What type of crystals are in the tower?
No, the scalar wave doesn't come from the crystals, right? The kind of crystal that is in the tower is just a regular crystal, and Harald would source it from different places. It's not so important what kind of crystal is in there. The crystal is there to, once the toroidal field is started, that's what creates the scalar waves, right? When you have two opposite charges, it creates the scalar, right? So it's basically, it gets created through the action of the charged fourth phase water, right? The counterclockwise in the bottom, the clockwise at the top. That then creates a toroidal field, and a toroidal field creates scalar waves. The crystal is then held to anchor that in, and then the souls get anchored to the cosmic tower. So it basically becomes like a 0 point device to where the energy is constantly supplied from the higher realms. This is why you don't have to plug your cosmic tower in, right, with a wire, and that's why it doesn't have to be recharged.
Right on. I want to make room again for people in the community. If you want to talk live, we love interacting with you, and you just go ahead and wave your hand or raise your digital hand, and we'd be happy to have you in the conversation. The next question is, I guess I'll take this one. You having any luck getting a CT220 to Hawaii? So progress. So it took about a month to get a quote from FedEx for shipping it here. How it can take that long for a business that large, I don't know. But we had the quote, and it's reasonable enough that we can afford to ship one here. And my living situation over here is is one of a more of a refugee or a new arrival, more bouncing from couch to couch and bed to bed and figuring out where I am than that I'm situated. So I don't have a stable location yet, although that seems to be coming together. And then the building of relationships takes time. And I've been working with a nonprofit over here. It's really cool. They've been buying the food from the farmers who were selling to the restaurants in Lahaina. And then they've been taking the food. We're talking like tens of thousands of pounds of produce. And they've been taking the food into kitchens at churches and restaurants that have excess capacity, making it into meals. And they even have like a team of people that I've been on the team that use magic markers and crayons and draw love and aloha all over the containers. And then we drive them out into the community and give them out to people. And it's not just for people living on the street or the homeless or unsheltered, if you will. It's for anybody who just needs a pick-me-up, who needs a little of the spirit of aloha. So I really love this organization, and I've been getting to know them. And I feel like the important thing to do right now is to be of service to their mission. So I've been doing that. And I trust that whoever I'm supposed to meet through that is going to just come into my life. And, there's plenty of people here who have pocket change to afford a Cosmic Tower 220. It's not even a recognizable amount of money for them to purchase it. So, when it's supposed to be here, it'll be here, or my living situation will clarify and it'll come, but there will be a 220 on Maui. It's going to happen, and it's coming soon. So, Nico, that opens up the kind of the broader question. You've been doing a lot of studying, not just Jack Kruse, but Gerald Pollack, and you've really been you've really stepped up in continuing to understand the cosmic towers and to lead that understanding. What insights would you like to share from the front lines of that research?
Well, sure. I mean, I've been studying that stuff for more than 20 years. I mean, I actually started studying when I moved here from Belgium. And I went to a doctor for the first time in the US. It was such a horrible experience. I was like, if I cannot figure out how to maintain my own health and get better, I'm so screwed. So I really went deep into like alternative sciences. I mean, my friends used to joke, they would call me Doc Martens because my house looked more like a lab than it did like a home, because I had all these devices in there. I had Rife devices, Tesla devices, ozone sauna, like on and on and on. My whole house was just filled with that stuff because going into that deep dive, like I realized that the science that I'd been told in college as an electromechanical engineer, the physics that I've been told simply is not true for the most part. And then I find out that simple things like the heart's not a pump, right? Clearly cannot be a pump. The Russians have figured out that the capillaries are smaller than the red blood cells. So in order to push all the, push the blood through, you need 1,000,000 times more pressure, more power. Now, do you know that they figured these things out in the early 1900s? Where they actually, looked at and saw a baby's blood circulate before the heart was operational. To me, like, I thought science was really like, hey, if something proves differently, we're going to go dig into it. And no. I found that the science that I was taught was, hey, if being skeptical is not about, I keep an open mind and test everything as neutral as I can be, and then I draw my conclusion. Right now, being skeptical means if it doesn't jive with mainstream science, we just brush it under the carpet. And I found so much of that has just been hidden for so long. And I can go much more in the details. What we're finding out is the importance of water. If you look in Gerald Pollack's book, realize that if you count the number of molecules, you're actually more than 99% water, because water is such a small molecule, and proteins and are much bigger. So they say we're 70-80% water. If you go look on really the counts of the molecules were more than 99% water. You go look in a cell, and a cell consists on more than 99.9% water, not tap water, living water, EZ water, structured water, like Gerald Pollack has figured out. Now, what do biochemists do when they study the cell? They dehydrate it. And then they go draw conclusions. So they're taking away 99.9% of what's in the cell. Now, what if it was all about water, about charge? And those are like the things that Gerald Pollack talks about, that we really have to look at electric charge, at water in the fourth phase. And yeah, there's just so much there. That is just Gerald Pollack's work. Then you go look at Jack Kruse. What does Jack Kruse tell? It's all about light. You're a light being. Light is what sets your circadian rhythm, which sets your biology. And the beautiful thing with like studying both of them is, even though their terminology is different, I see a lot of parallels with what Harald has taught us, right? It's about water. It's about the structure of water. Non-native EMFs basically destroy that mammalian battery, right? The cosmic tower helps to prevent that. And I'm going to go much more into this probably, in a few weeks or whenever. I would really love to do a call to take their science, create the linkages with the cosmic tower, and then give you something practical to put into place to make that real in your life. Because knowledge is just, it has potential, but not until you apply it. So much more to come on that. I know Shamel was raising his hand. I don't know if he wanted to jump in. Feel free, if you'd like to.
I'm asking him to unmute, so we should have him in a sec.
Hi.
Hi. I have a question.
Yep.
Being that linen, it vibrates at 5,000 megahertz, because I was reading up on some of the stuff you were just talking about as well, and I was wondering if the cosmic tower could be made out of linen, being that it vibrates at 5,000 megahertz naturally. Would that affect like the toroidal field and make it better?
You have to understand that the physical parts of the cosmic tower are really like 10% of it. And with just like the wood and the glass and the water and the crystal, it just does what it needs to do. And most of the enhancements are in the subtle realms, right? Now, about linen in and of itself, I haven't done the research on that. I know one of the things that really starts separating us from nature is wearing clothing, right? Because our skin is our solar panel, right? The skin creates EZ water, and then later on creates vitamin D, etc., and adds charge to our skin. So when we never, see sunlight, that's not a good thing. So yeah, absolutely. I think the clothes is one of the separations. Then we sleep on beds that are raised above the earth. Most mammals sleep connected to the earth because at night is when that charge is much stronger. So they basically get recharged. So there's much to talk about there. It would take a whole call by itself. And I promise you, we will do a follow-up on that to go deeper into it. So yeah. Thank you for your question. I do know that Harald and then the person that's more like the spiritual guy that tested it and did the connections, I do know that they've put a lot of, thought into the materials that they use, the type of glass, right? And then the full water spectrum.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you for your question. The other thing,
another question I have. Sorry, one more question.
Sure.
Okay. I have a Kangen machine. It makes living water. With that, how would that affect it?
Well, Harald used to talk about that when the things you are doing are beneficial, obviously it's not going to negate it, but what it can often do is like you can have a bit beneficial device that creates beneficial benefits, but still creates detrimental EMF. Right. So what it will do then is make your device better in a way. If that is the case, right, it's actually going to be like, oh yeah, this is really good. Let's add a little to it to make it even better. Or like, let's neutralize this EMF from the device so we get an even more powerful effect. One of the things, since you mentioned Kangen, I also want you to look into, they had huge success with Kangen in Japan. And they did all these studies, but then it wasn't the same in the US. They made one big assumption that an American and a Japanese person are the same, diet-wise and otherwise. So I would recommend look into the fats, the DHAs and all that. Like in Japan, they eat a lot of fish, a lot of raw fish, which for mammals is also a part of the equation, the DHA and the beneficial fats together with the water.
Jen, there's a link maybe you could pass to Shamel. We've got an ebook on the Wellness Enterprise about alkaline water from the 2 years where we were experimenting with Kangen water, and that might provide some deeper insights on that topic too. So, I think what Nico adds on the top of that is having the tower around is going to give you the best performance of a Kangen machine that you can have, primarily. Our experience with that is that it's really effective as cleaning agents, like the water that it can make, the clean version, the very high and very low pH, and that it's good on a drinking basis, on a temporary basis, but long term, it's something to really be aware of how it can be out of balance. So
I get exactly what you're saying, and sorry, it's not that it makes alkaline water, it makes ionized water. My apologies. Apologies. It makes ionized
so
water.
Nico, we never explored this together, Nico, but maybe we can, talk about it a little bit here. So, the way Kangen makes ionized water is it uses highly charged electric plates and it shocks the water into two streams. And I get that that's called ionized. And then the cosmic tower and the structured water devices we have, those are creating negative ions in the water. And that seems to be from a place of like vortexing and sacred geometry. I don't know how to distinguish between the two, between those type of ions. But I can distinguish like a man-made version of something from a naturally generated version. And it's the naturally generated that I'm interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I would say always stay as close to nature as you can. Use nature's principles. And that's what I love about the Cosmic Tower. It's very much like our own bodies, like a tree, right? It's very much, it doesn't plug into the grid because the 50, 60 hertz, depending where you're at on the globe, it's very detrimental to the body with the alternating currencies. And then, then it's a question, how well have they made sure that that's not affecting the water or has a detrimental effect? Because you do know that water has a memory, right? And that it will pick up those things. So personally, I've not tested the Kangen, Shamel, so I cannot give you a personal experience. But to follow up on this, like I love Mike's comment in the chat where he was following up on the biogeometry way of testing the powers of his CT75. And he made a small experiment with his CT75 tower, putting a cup of water on top of it, keeping it there for a few minutes while asking the tower to create a remedy in the cup. And then he tested it again, tested it was full of life force with his biogeometry tools. So I agree with what he says. Go and play and experiment with your tower and your water and learn to measure all these things for yourself. Right?
That's always the best right there. When we're our own authority, we
well, that's what we have to do right now, because hey, the white coats, the politicians and stuff, they're not going to do it for us. That's part of the old system. right? They just want to get whatever they get going, and that needs to go now in the times that we're in as our vibration is rising and our consciousness is expanding. It's all about us becoming our own authority again. But for me, our own authority, deciding what we want to do, but in harmony with nature. Right? Never do any harm to another organism. Right?
Right on. Shamal, thanks for your participation. Great to have you on the call. Does the structured water in the tower need to be replenished depending on the level? You bet. Depending on the level of exposure to EMF.
No, they don't. And that question comes a lot. Now, what you do have is, and I've talked about this quite a bit, if you live on a ranch in Wyoming with not a single cell tower around, right? It's like the cosmic tower can really expand out and shine its light while it's in a little apartment in LA, downtown LA, just surrounded by 5G and who knows what distortions. What you kind of feel is like it feels shrink a little bit to keep the strength going. It's just bumping into too much distortion. So it's like, ooh, I'm only going to go like this far. That doesn't mean it can still sense energy within its range, but I'm talking about the stable, beneficial field around the tower, right? So from my experience, that shrinks in certain environments. I've tested my towers like range and strength. The strength still tests the same, if that makes sense, but it's just the sphere where it can continuously and constantly keep that just gets smaller in those urban environments. And that's why the big towers are so important, because they create more space for the smaller towers. They handle a big part of the general load in an area to where the towers can more open up, expand, and cover a bigger area with your smaller tower.
None. Okay, do the towers affect air quality, like interior dust specifically?
Yes, so the way Harald explains that is because there's always moisture in the air in most places. So what happens? Remember, anything in a toroidal field, any water in there is going to get structured. The same for the water that's in the air. So the first effect that you're going to get is that the water vapors that are in the air, they're going to be hexagonally structured, creating negative ions. So that's the first effect. The second effect is, like, what did Harald talk about as far as toxins versus beneficial substances? Toxins, whether they're general or more subtle, they have this counterclockwise spin, while beneficial things have the clockwise spin. So the other thing that the tower does is neutralize that counterclockwise spin. And because of that, the way Harald explained it is that the dust that's in the air kind of settles on the floor. That's why the small towers do not like to sit directly on the floor, because they feel they're sitting in the dirt of what they're pretty much like neutralized. That's why they want to sit up more. That's not an issue with the big towers. But yeah, I think when they did the study on the ions, I got to dig it up where it is again, but it was almost a 20-fold increase in negative ions. And I forget what kind of tower it was. I think it was like a 1 meter 81, but I'm not exactly sure. So a little smaller than a 220. So yeah.
Right on. Well, that brings us to the end of our prepared questions. Does anybody have a question they want to ask live now? We've got room for you.
Or share their experiences, right? Or
Sure. Anything you want to share? We love hearing your voices in our community dialogues. It enriches things immensely. I don't know how to say your name, but I'll unmute you and let you tell me.
Calling on me. I've had the 35 for a couple of weeks, and it's very subtle, but I've just been in a better mood. Not ecstatic, but just peaceful. And I feel more spiritually connected, sort of like I'm letting life flow through me more, that I'm the doer, and there's just a greater ease. So I'm grateful. I mean, I've done a ton of work on myself over the years, over my 67 years, and there's just something beautiful and effortless about having this tower. And I want more. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's a very like common feedback we get. One of them that I keep forgetting about because you take it for granted is like people are, oh my God, I slept so good for the first time in so long, or I slept so deep. I was a little groggy in the morning, and it came up yesterday on a call that we were at, and I was like, man, I always forget how bad I used to sleep before the tower, because you take it for granted, right? Once you start feeling better. And then sometimes I have people that say like, well, I don't really feel the tower. I don't know if I feel it or whatever. And I was like, well, what are you experiencing, you know, in your life and with yourself? I don't know. I'm just more peaceful. I was like, isn't that a big deal? Because when you're peaceful and when you're more relaxed, your body can do its thing. Most people are stuck in that like sympathetic fight or flight 24/7. We don't even realize it anymore because it has become the new baseline to be constantly stressed and contracted. And then the cosmic tower comes in, and the people might be like, yeah, I need you to fix my little toe, and I got the spot on my back that I want you to get rid of. Cosmic Tower's like, first thing you gotta do, you gotta relax. You gotta get you out of this fight or flight. And I don't know, I think it was better, like the first 5 days. Didn't you sleep like 9 or 10 hour nights?
You're exactly right. I think I had 3 nights out of 4 that were 9.5 or 10 hours. That's a lot. You know, but people are funny about that. Like in 2013, I didn't know anything about structured water, and I get devices and I would just like pass them through to people at like cost plus a little bit to cover shipping or whatever. And then I'd ask for their experience. I'm like, just tell me what happens in your life. And one of the people that got one was the head of an insurance company. I was like, oh, this is going to be the gateway that takes the wellness enterprise onto the world stage. And I called Tim up a couple of weeks after he got his device, and I was like, how is he? He's like, oh, I'm not really noticing anything. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, well, tell me what's going on in your life. He's like, well, you know, when I got it, I was, you know, probably for the last few years, I drink like 2 glasses of water a day. And now I drink like 10 glasses of water a day. And I really like water a lot more. But, you know, like I said, I'm not really noticing anything. And I was like, well, do you want your money back? He's like, no, definitely not. I was like, okay, well, as long as you're not noticing anything, I'll probably just leave you like that. And, you know, if anything comes up, just let me know. And like, that's how it was for him. Like, really, like people don't notice. And, you know, having spent so much time sick in this lifetime, you know, a couple of decades of irritable bowel syndrome and Lyme disease and whatnot, for me, I think what healing is just stacking calm experiences. You just stack one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, until all the tension in your body just melts away and you feel well. So I don't think there's anything more profound than what you just shared. Like, feeling better is everything. One of my early mentors, when I was working through the irritable bowel syndrome, he was a funny guy, and he had this simple saying: better is better. Like, how you feel? I feel better. Okay, good. Who's next? You know, that's it. You feel better. And then you just stack that. So it's a beautiful thing. So this is perfect for our next question, which is, I have a 220, 75, and 35. I talk to them, but I do not feel a connection with them. Today, I brought them all into the living room and am sitting with them. Please give me some suggestions on how to deal with them.
Yeah, I think it was Eileen, right? Yeah, and I know you were in the past classes. So yeah, absolutely. Like, keep connecting with them and know that if I remember it like correctly, you've had it for a while now. So I don't know if in the beginning it was the same, because one thing that happens, like in the beginning, it can be, whoa, even overwhelming of what you feel. And it can be a big change. But then over time, it's like everything, as we get used to it, our baseline like changes. Right. So one of the things I'd like to ask you, have you been away for your towers and gone something completely different where you didn't have them? Oftentimes it's not until people leave the field of their tower and go somewhere else that they actually realize how harmonious their own environment is.
No, I went on a cross-country trip and I took the 35 with me.
Mhm.
So I've always had it with me since I've had them. I've had the 35 has lived in my travel van that I have.
Mhm.
And so I haven't been away from it. I've always been in the field since they arrived.
Yeah, so that's one thing, like you get really used to that. And often I get that comment, or when people are like completely away from it, or where there's even no big towers. Yvonne was talking about that in Holland. She would go to Ibiza all the time, and that would be her place that would raise her vibration. And then she started having the big towers, and then she went back and she told Harald, like, really weird thing is going on. Like, I can't feel it anymore in Ibiza. It's actually not feeling good to me anymore. What is going on? He's like, well, you've gotten so used to being in a harmonious field that you don't even think about it. And that you don't
Ah.
even realize until you get out of it, and you're like, holy shit, what is this? Right? Think about it. If you've ever had, I don't know, like a back pain or anything else, and you're like, this is the worst thing ever, and then you feel good again, how long does it take your mind to get used to that and to get adapted to it? So other things to look at is like, hey, as far as what you've asked your towers for help with, right? And as far as what you expected from your towers, have you seen results in that? Right.
I ask it to help me sleep. However, one night I slept 8 hours, but now I'm lucky if I get 6 hours of sleep a night.
Well,
And
but are you? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
it's a restful sleep, but then I'm awake and I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, oh, it's too early to get up.
Well, let me tell you something. Like the reason I talked about this sleep and that being the first thing is because many people are so sleep deprived, so they have to catch up. Now, when you become more spiritual and you're raising your vibration, you're gonna need less sleep. Like my Taoist teacher is like a really high level. He probably sleeps 2 hours a night. Why? Because you're not wearing yourself out all day with your mind and with your emotions, which taking up all your energy. So you stay balanced throughout the day. I remember when I did my first 10-day silent retreat, Vipassana, my mind got so quiet. It was like a lake, barely any ripple. I felt so good, and I would barely sleep. I'd meditate 15 hours a day, but go to sleep late at night, get up at like 3:30. And it was totally fine. I had tons of energy. So the more you go up in vibration, the more balanced you become, the more clear all your bodies become, the less need you have for sleep. Sleep is just your body saying like, okay, you're not resting, you're not clearing your stuff. I mean, you keep going. We're just like knocking you out for 10 hours so the body can regenerate.
Mm.
Do you feel
Well,
rested?
I recently gave up my reading glasses because I went to a workshop and they said, you see from your brain.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on releasing my brain quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eileen, do you feel rested after you sleep 6 hours? I know you don't want to get up. Like I totally get that feeling, but like I've been waking up at 3, 4, 5 a lot more often right now. But I'm finding if I actually engage, like this morning I got up at like 5:30 and it was still dark, and I just eventually got so excited about what I was going to do today that I wanted to get up, and there's no lack of feeling rested. So I don't know if you notice that as much as like counting the hours.
Well, this morning I woke up and I felt tired, but usually I feel good. Yeah, I feel real rested. So I won't look at how many hours I'm sleeping. I'll just go with what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
So
that
thank you.
Yeah,
That's
the wisdom of Tom Tam, better is better.
Yeah.
the other thing is that 3 o'clock time is a very special time. They talk about in all spiritual traditions. The way to look at it, like I know some of my teachers told me like that's a good time to meditate. because the collective mind is really quiet. Everybody's asleep. And my teacher would also talk about how if you go more and more through your development, that's the time where you get visitors from ancestors and get your gifts. So it's a good time to just sit and be quiet and be present and aware. Yeah.
One more question in there, Eileen. I noticed that as I have brought intentions to my tower and they've been fulfilled, that my confidence and conviction are rising. And so now I'm starting to like play at a different level. So when I ask now, I'm actually talking out loud to my tower. And I'm curious whether you're talking out loud to any of your towers or whether it's more thinking it when you're asking.
Well, my tower's on the 3rd floor. My bedroom's on the 2nd floor. And usually I talk to them from bed.
Gotcha.
And so if I'm talking, sometimes I talk out loud. I don't know if they hear or not because of the going through the floor.
Yeah. Well, just something to play with. Like it more and more as I see the miracles, through a Craigslist ad, somebody's just shown up in my life that has a farm with 2,000 macadamia nut trees and 200 fruit trees and is looking for people to come live on the land and be good people. And so the rent is like a third of usual rent. And I'm like, that happened like within 36 hours of talking out loud with my tower. And I'm like, I literally can't imagine a better scenario to be experimenting with. I'm almost afraid to talk about it out loud. I'm so excited about it. I'm going to see the property tomorrow, but I met the person yesterday. So, as those things happen, as I like sit and ask and dialogue and then things show up, it's like conviction just goes through the roof. And it's like, wow, I'm going to talk out loud, like I'm going to put my desires into words so that they have a stronger energy in this world. So just another thing I thought might help you build that bridge.
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you very much.
Great. All right, Jordan, thanks for waiting patiently. I think I just muted you after you had already unmuted
I
yourself.
unmuted myself.
There you go.
Yes. Okay. Let me lower my hand. Okay. I have several, I'll call it scalar energy devices in my home, and I visit another one. And what I wanted, and Nico was talking about how, you want to kind of experiment with, with it. So what I noticed, okay. So it seems like they all have slightly different effects. Okay, so what I'm wondering how I would experiment to be able to know what's different about, like, why they're different. So the one that I don't have in my home is the EE system. So with the EE system, I had uncontrolled anxiety, and none of the other devices worked as well as going and visiting it, and it worked for the situation that I had. It worked for about exactly 23 hours, and then the anxiety would come back. I went 3 times, and then initially it lasted about 2 weeks. I'd have to go 3 days in a row again, and then now it's pretty good. Then it decreased to about a month, and now I go there for something else. So I guess what I'm wondering, besides knowing its effect, these devices' effects on you, how else could you measure what's different about, say, the toroidal field or other properties associated with it? So I also did some functional medicine testing based on what some other people said. Oh, it's doing this. That would be a bit more accepted. So I found that it affects you, basically, how you were talking about, the first thing Cosmic Tower, or I think any of these scalar technologies will do, is make you relax. So the test results show that. And the thing that I was really interested in is being able to live with less food, because just the way my body works, I've never gotten enough, and the intake doesn't doesn't really. It has more effect now, but like eating more doesn't do it. So I was trying to cause my need for it to be less, and I think for that purpose, like I found one of them was better than the other. So besides its effect on on the person, and that's what actually Dr. Ibrahim Karim said in one of his YouTube videos. How could you do it? I'd say like more. Like neutrally, not its effect on you.
Yeah, so I mean you can test them independently, right? If you take a scalar device somewhere else, or you hone in on your device and seeing exactly what the benefits are. I mean, important to test to make sure they're playing well with the cosmic tower. And you brought up the EE system, and we'll go more into that later.
I do not have an EE system.
No, but you go visit it, right?
Yeah. So there's someone who's spiritual and generous who is letting people, set it up as a ministry, is letting people come and use it. Yeah.
That's really nice, because that's a pure intent. We have some stories about the cosmic tower and the EE system when that intent is not pure, and when the EE system is used to make money off of people, and when that becomes the driver. We actually had one CT35 take down an entire system, to where like just pointing out as in like, hey, this is not pure. And because of that, actually one of the people that would set up the EE systems and set it up for remote actually really loved the cosmic tower and is coming on board with us now, and wants to help with the cosmic tower, and we'll bring him on. His name is John. So we have a lot to share there. The other thing I would say, Jordan, is more is not better.
I mean, more isn't better, but I had a specific reason for each of, because the reason I kept getting different ones is because I had a problem with occult forces. So I visited the EE system. It worked for the inventor of one of the devices I had, but it didn't work as well for me. I still had to fight back with the techniques in my two dark forces class that I took. And so, I mean, for being able to fight back versus not being able to fight back, I appreciated that. But with the cosmic tower, I don't even, it does a lot of that work. Now, I can't rush off and invite these things, but not even by accident. But so that's basically like why I ended up having the cosmic tower. And then for the EE system, it's really for some medical conditions, which, like I think with your techniques and with the other devices, it's much better. But the EE system, it has some other things like color therapy and sound therapy. So, and with who has brought it into what I'll call the community, I think it's a good intent, and so it has a good effect. But one thing, I guess another thing I noticed that the E system isn't nearly as powerful as the cosmic tower for dark forces. Mm-hmm. And another thing I noticed with the cosmic tower, and the reason I wanted to figure out how to measure what's different about them, because of all the devices, nothing has been, as effective as reducing I'll call it the baseline level of my fear as the cosmic tower. Because actually, one of the inventors of one of the devices, because like I know that he's fearful. Let's put it that way. So, and Patrick isn't. So. I ended up recommending his device for something in I'll call it my church group. And then I saw how fearful that inventor was. And I thought, well, you might want to look at this one. And I said, here are a bunch of YouTube videos. And they asked, how does it work? And I couldn't exactly explain it, So I told them, this is what they told me. Here are all the Q&As. And yeah, so, but that is one thing I noticed with the Cosmic Tower, that, you know, the anxiety is different than the baseline level of fear. So, you know, some of the things that I was doing that was due to that baseline level of fear, you know, now I feel, no, I don't feel any need to go out of my way to do them, you know, and spend extra money to be able to do that.
Well, that's great. And you've had your tower since what, end of March?
Correct, yeah.
June, July, August, like 6 months, right?
And actually, as soon as I ordered it, it started having effects on the allergic cat, because so she has environmental allergies. So it didn't even have to arrive before it had an effect on her, because I was out getting medical care in another country. These scalar technology, it makes you, I'd call it, all of these, I found it makes you neighborly. You know, before, before I wasn't even willing to, like, no, nobody can come over and experience the tower. And then once the tower came, like, oh, no, I've changed my mind about this. No, people can come and experience the tower, you know, so, but each of them has a slightly different effect. And so I guess I was interested to know more about why it's like that, because then the church group was asking, how does it work? And I can't really explain it to them.
Well, let me, one big difference is, it sounds like you mentioned the EE, I don't know what other systems.
The other one is Fresh and Alive's Home Shield, I have that. That helped me fight back in the dream state against the dark forces. And then biogeometry. So I got the Home Shield first, and then the biogeometry amplified whatever its scalar effects. And then I still had to fight back, and it was quite a bit of effort. And then I got the Cosmic Tower, and now, I feel like much more, like relaxed as a baseline state.
That's perfect. I would give you the advice, just let that develop and see where it takes you. I know Harald, when we talked about other devices, he was saying, like, yeah, some devices are really powerful, but you can also, do damage with it. He talked about this one guy whose face drooped, and it's not that more powerful is always better. It's not that faster is better either, right? A lot of these things have been developing over a long time. What I find for the Cosmic Tower is that it finds the most graceful path, right, to address those. And it sounds like you're having, good experiences, and just stay with that. Right?
Yeah, I feel like I don't need any more devices in my life, because the thing I really wanted was the protection from occult forces. And so between the education and the devices, I think I'm set.
Yeah, I think so too. And you got that handled. So yeah, just stay with it. And also remember, because of the Cosmic Tower, with some of the technological scalar wave devices, human intent is really important. Now, human intent is not always pure, and also kind of seems to wear off over time. Remember that with the Cosmic Tower, it's always like the higher dimensional intent, to where people could not use it for anything detrimental or harm themselves with. So if we ask something from the tower that would be harmful, the tower checks with the higher self and is like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that, because it's not beneficial for you right now. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Jordan. Nico, how many large towers are still needed to complete full coverage of the U.S.?
Well, that depends on what you consider complete and full coverage. I mean, if we're speaking, right, let's repeat this. Like, a Cosmic Tower has its range where it can send energy, but each Cosmic Tower also has a limited amount of energy, a level, right? So you have to look in every area. There's going to be, the tower can help and start optimizing things. But in LA, you might have this much distortion, and one tower represents this. So we're gonna need maybe 40 or 50 from one area to completely neutralize everything. So we can, I think we shared the coverage and we did it on a YouTube video, so you can see from an area point of view where there's cosmic tower support. But then as far as like how many towers are like needed, that is much higher to get everything neutral and to get all distortions taken care of. And then it's dynamic, right? We get more powerful because of the towers. You know, also feel like as our vibration in the collective changes, I also feel that the towers become more powerful. That is on the beneficial side of the spectrum. Then we also have on the detrimental side of the spectrum more 5G rollouts going into 6G, etc. So it's hard to say like this is a static number and that's what it's going to be. But what I'm interested in, at least, and for our community, is just keep building that beneficial energy, keep raising the vibration of each of us individually and also of the collective.
Sounds good. Okay, guys, we've gotten through the questions again. Does anybody want to raise their hand or share your experience or ask a question?
Helen, are you talking? I think you're muted. I can't hear you. Can I unmute you? Here, we'll send you a button. No.
You clicked the ask to unmute.
Yeah, I did too. Well,
looks like she's on a phone. Sometimes things are harder to see.
Yeah. Are there areas of the country that have absolutely no coverage? Yeah. If you look at the coverage, I can pull up the map, but you basically go from like British Columbia in the west all the way down the coast, right, through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, really strong, Florida, up the East Coast. But then in the center of the country, there's a big gap in coverage, which I find interesting because there's some things related to consciousness that at the coast, they seem to be a bit further ahead. I forget how exactly it works. So yeah, in the middle of the country, Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, more in the Midwest. Yeah, we have big gaps there. And you can go, and there's a YouTube video that we posted about the coverage a few weeks ago. You can go look at that one, and that's still fairly accurate. Helen, did you have a question or a comment? Or... No. Nope. Okay. No. Perfect.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you for showing up today and yeah, your interest in this project. We appreciate you. And Nico, thanks for all that you're doing to understand these towers and help us understand. And we're going to be back the first Tuesday of every month for these Q&As. So yeah, mark your calendars, come back, bring friends, bring your questions, bring your experiences, engage with your towers, talk to them more, and let us know how it's going so we can all move this together. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody, and yeah, time to say goodbye until next time. And see you all.
Thank you.
See you all soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.